Hey guys, it's been a long time since I spoke about a TV show. This channel's known for doing NRL videos, but I wanted to do something different today. I've just finished watching the Netflix series based on the 1982 version of The Dark Crystal. Now this is called The Age of Resistance. This video is going to have some spoilers in it, but yeah, stick around if you've watched the show and let's break down the episodes one by one. Alright, let's get into episode 1. Now the thing I loved about this show, I'm pretty sure is every episode had the same, every title was a saying from the original 1982 Dark Crystal. This one was called "And Begin All the Same," obviously quoted by Mother Aughra, who I'll talk about later. She, from memory, wasn't in this episode. I think we did see a vision of her, but she wasn't physically in the episode. So we've got fantastic characters, new lovable gelflings. We've got Rian. Rian is very strong-willed against his father, who is the emperor of the gelfling. You've got Breya, who is basically royalty to the gelfling. She was cool. She was really, really cool. Her knowledge was great as well. The interactions between her and her librarian. But it was only a pilot, so we only just got to see the start of these characters. Mira, Rian's love interest, also really cool, but don't get attached because, as I said, this video is going to contain spoilers. She dies a very brutal death at the end of the first episode. You could tell that this wasn't completely a kids show. The Skeksis, they love draining the essence out of the gelfling, but the Skeksis, they were definitely the highlight of this series, and I want to see more of the mystics next season, which I'll talk about more at the end about the mystics because they come into it. But the Skeksis, Chamberlain did a fantastic job as Simon Pegg, Mark Hamill as the scientist. They were all fantastic interacting with each other, and the classic Chamberlain was fantastic. I love this series, and this being an opening episode was awesome. We also met Deet, who got to see moments that are going to happen throughout the series, which is what I really liked when she interacted with the Sanctuary Tree. I could not wait for these characters to meet each other, which it comes sooner. But the first episode, the shocking big death of Mira, but a great pilot to begin the Age of Resistance. We move on to episode 2, Nothing is Simple Anymore. Now this episode was quite enjoyable. I'm not saying nothing wrong with the pilot, but I felt like there was more of a storyline to this. And the fact that there were so many characters, and Mira was really cool, but getting rid of her really made the other characters shine. She really had her moments in the first one. You adored her. But in this episode, basically, Rian flees the castle with Gurjin, which is basically his best friend. And I liked Gurjin. Gurjin was pretty cool. Breya, I've done it a few times. Breya goes to meet with Elder Kadir, and Elder Kadir is this basically wise gelfling. What happens though is she clears his memory, and that doesn't go down well with the locals. So just like Rian, she ends up fleeing her home. In regards to Deet, Deet is also away from home. They're all going on their own individual journey, and as I said, I could not wait for them all to come together. One of my favourite moments besides Chamberlain is Hub. Now, if you've seen this show, let me know right now in the comments how much you love Hub. Hub is a podling. Now, the podling were described as the filthiest creature on the planet throughout this film, but they were fantastic. They were funny, and I'll get to them more. But there are implications of brainwashing Elder Kadir. But the iconic moment for me is at the end of this episode, the betrayal between Chamberlain and the scientist happens. And we finally get to see the moment that the scientist lost his eye. Because if you're watching The Dark Crystal in 1982, you can see that he's got a blue kind of eye, not a physical one. But in the show, first episode he had, and I'm thinking, how are they going to get to that? Are they going to get to that? I thought that was really cool. Another great episode. And another big thing is that Mother Aughra wakes up from her big sleep. She's alive, surprise, surprise, because a lot of people described her as being gone, so we may have thought she was dead, but she reconnects with Archer, who is also a mystic, so we get a bit of a tease towards the mystic. But as I said, that ending was fantastic, where he loses the eye bitten by the scorpion. Let's move on to episode 3. In episode 3, Sundred and Undone, I thought this episode was one of the best for me. The opening where Breya is sent to the Order of Lesser Service and has to clean podlings while they're jumping around, it was the most comedic moment in the show. But it also got dark. And when I'm talking about dark, I'm talking about the Grunaks. Now, the Grunaks were referenced in the old 1982 Dark Crystal original film, but they were never properly seen. And in this, they looked very misery. What happened was their mouths was shown shut, and this was creepy enough. But the fact that they were working for them, keeping their secrets, that they look so innocent at first. But you think about what they did over the series, and even though the ending is dark, I'll get to that more later. Rian reunites with his people, including his father, who do not trust him at all. Rian also gets to meet Deet. That moment was awesome. They run into each other. I was counting down for it. And for it to happen in episode 3, I think that's pretty soon. So I was happy with that. As I spoke about Breya and the Order of Lesser Service, she also creates a lot of conflict with her sister. She goes and speaks to the assistant of Elder Kadir once again, which I cannot remember her name for the life of me. And she tells her to grab the brightest jewel from her mother's chambers. She grabs that jewel, opens it, and we lead to this mystery of what the Skeksis are, what's been happening, and we don't get to see it. By the end of this episode, we go under the castle and it cuts off. So, as I said, very dark episode, also one of the best. Gurjin, I honestly thought Gurjin was going to die. And thinking characters are going to die and then realising they are is a very big difference in this show. But really, really enjoyed episode 3. Hup was missing for the majority of the episode as he was thrown into the chambers. I think they called it the hole, a night in the hole. But did you guys enjoy this episode as much as me? Episode 4 is called The First Thing I Remember Is Fire. This episode was a little bit weak, I think, at the start, but it got a lot better. One key moment in this episode that I'll speak about for me is the fact that Rian's father reconnects with him and finds trust in him. Now, as soon as this happens, he also sacrifices his life. Now, I can understand that this was a gut punch. I did not see this death coming. I mean, as it was leading up to it, I thought, here we go, he's going to die. And there's so many characters that actually meet their end throughout this series. But Breya, throughout the episode, connects with Law, and Law reveals the secrets of the Skeksis, what is happening, how to save, fulfill the prophecy. But the thing is, this show is a prequel, and I think the Dark Crystal is set a lot further when you're speaking of the 1982 series. Deet rescues Hup as a bird. It was a cool scene. I loved it. I also love the Skeksis at dinner. They did this a lot during the 82. I think there were 2 or 3 scenes during the old, but the Skeksis at dinner, we got to see more of the Emperor. We got to see a bit more of is it the Hunter, the General? The General. He was really cool. And obviously the Hunter sacrifice or dying with we thought died, but he didn't. In the, I don't know what they call these sucky things where Rian's dad dies, but I like this scene. This moment where they all dream fast together. I love the dream fasting scenes as a whole. it was really hard, and it's hard to speak about as well. You can understand how many characters there are to follow. I can't include every moment in this show, and I don't want this review to go for 40 minutes. I'd prefer it to go for 20. So we'll move on now to episode 5. Episode 5, she knows all the secrets. Now, I know I'm going to forget something. Now, this was one of my favorite episodes of the series, if not my favorite. There's so much to get through that I'm trying to remember because there's so many different moments to speak about. The one moment that stood out for me is seeing everyone together in the dream space. The moment where Aughra unites these heroes that we know are going to save. Well, do we know? Could they all die in future? I don't know. But being in the dream space, talking about what the Skeksis had done, was such a big key moment. Breya gets to show her mother Lore, and she learns about what the Lords of the Crystal, the Skeksis, are really doing. The Skeksis for themselves were pretty cool in this. As I said, Chamberlain, one of the standout, he captures Rian from the Hunter, who the Hunter survived in the last episode after killing Rian's dad. And he talks about running away, and I thought this was a really cool moment, and it helped Rian's character arc, and it showed how brave he was and not a coward. And I never thought he was a coward, but it was really cool. In regards to Deet and Hub, they had some cool funny moments throughout the episode. But the big gut punch that I did not see coming at the end, the deaths keep rolling, and that is of the All-Mordra, Breya's mum. This, from here, is where Saladon takes a turn for the worse. Now, Saladon was really dark in the first couple episodes, but turns into Daenerys coming up. So, episode 5, as I said, so much to get through. Absolutely one of my favourites. Mother Aughra dancing. The quirkiness of her character is great. There's too many Gelfling to remember. And as I said, Hub. So let's move on to episode 6. Episode 6 by Gelfling Hand got really dark. We've had a few character deaths, but Saladon, she seems so young and full of, not wisdom, I'm trying to think of the word, but God, she took a turn of darkness in this episode, turned into Daenerys Targaryen almost. I loved the crown, the outfit towards the end where you get to see how evil she was. But the best thing about this episode is the fact that everybody comes together. Breya, Rian, Deet, Hup, you've got them all coming together and some fantastic moments shared throughout the episode. As I said, Saladon was probably the standout for me. She grew so dark. She watched Gelfling basically get dragged away, but she obviously doesn't know the truth yet about the Skeksis draining their essence. Another great scene where the Skeksis are all at dinner. I'm trying to think of main key moments. Lore got to break out of the castle and help out. There was a really cool chase scene as well where Rian goes to rescue with Gurjin, I think with Gurjin. I did watch the series 5 days ago. I finished it on Friday, so don't blame me if I get anything wrong. I know I've gotten a few things wrong, in the wrong order. Aughra and Archer have some cool key interaction together, and it leads them all to this journey towards the end. And Saladon, just so evil and dark and against everybody. The Skeksis have done it now, and we're getting close to the end. In episode 7, Time to Make My Move, we get to see just how dangerous and dark the Skeksis are. They team up with the Ascendancy. Now, I hate spiders, so this episode started to creep me out a little bit. And I won't spoil it, but when the Ascendancy kind of showed up, I kind of thought they looked like the Gartherum. I think that's what they call them from the original. Well, they're also in this show now. I'll get to that later. From the original series. In this episode, one key moment that I loved that I want to speak about is a puppet within a puppet show. That was really cool. Now, I almost thought that the Skeksi that was a good guy, I forget their names. There's so many characters in the show. But the Skeksis and the Mystic in the Circle of Suns, where they travel to on this journey where they've been going for the last couple episodes, I thought there was going to be a trick, and I thought it was going to be a villain. So it was really cool to see the hero, but the puppet within a puppet show, and the moment where the Mystic was saying words every few minutes. The puppet show really explained the history of the Skeksis, the Gelfling, the crystal itself, how it became the Dark Crystal. Saladon, once again, leading the Skeksis through darkness, and a dark ending where we see these spider creatures invading Stone of the Wood, just all of Thra coming to an end. Mother Aughra seeing that bad things are going to happen, but quite an enjoyable episode once again, and we're getting very close to the end now. In episode 8, Prophets Don't Know Everything, Celadon starts to realise what the Skeksis are doing, but her attitude doesn't change. I mean, she doesn't see them physically be drained, but she says a quote that was like, sacrifice a few for the greater good of many. Aughra's up to her old tricks again, but the key standout for this is that there's a great interaction, and you start to get the feeling of a love story grooming between Rian and Deet. Now, Deet has been a fantastic character all series, which took Bria to a back seat, in my opinion, and Bria still has a lot we can see from her throughout next series, I think, if they do make a season 2, which they should, but it has to be as good as this. This series was so good, and that's why I'm making a review, because this is the best show I've watched in a long time. I loved it from start to finish. Anyway, going through the tunnel, her whole family, the Grottons, have been like corrupted. They're going to find the Jewel Blade, which was spoken about. I haven't spoken about it in this review, but it's the weapon that will defeat the Skeksis in the future. That was spoken about back at the Circles of the Suns episodes. Hub kind of takes a back seat. He's kind of injured, so he's staying with the Mystic and the Skeksis, but not the bad one, the good one. And yeah, we're getting very, very close to the end. You can feel the story coming very close to an end. You've got a few character deaths that have happened, have made a big impact, but the darkness is really starting. The Skeksis are terrifying. There's a moment where the Grunaks are told that if they follow Chamberlain's orders, that their mouths will... thinking about their mouth, it's sickening. It's so sickening, and that's what I love about this show. It's able to scare you. It looks like a kid's show, but it's not. And it's just like the original series. Episode 8 for me, fantastic to watch, and a big lead up to what I think you could even call a 2-part finale. 9 and 10 are where it all starts to heat up, but episode 8, really enjoyable. In episode 9, The Crystal Calls, I love the fact that the grandma's walking stick, Deet's grandma, was in fact the Jewel Blade. That scene was so funny, where she's hitting it. It's a walking stick. Why didn't you say you were looking for it? The obvious thing, hidden right in front of them. Now the Skeksis, they seem to be feared. Now they're still dangerous here, but in my opinion, they seemed a bit weak. We also have a massive death to come, and that death is Mother Aughra. Now, we saw Mother Aughra, and we know that this series is a prequel, so for me, it didn't add up. I just didn't think I'd see her again in this series for some reason. It seemed like a really, really big death, because they're trying to bring back the Hunter, but it doesn't go to plan, per se. But the highlight for me, the walking stick moment was cool, but the highlight for me in this one I'll speak about, because I'm mainly speaking about a key moment from every episode and how good, enjoyable it was, is Rian using the, I guess you could call it wildfire, that's what it's called in Game of Thrones, to communicate with every Gelfling on Earth, and for everybody to know the truth behind the Skeksis. We've watched a lot of characters, as I said, so many characters to get through. We've watched them been told, Dreamfar, all these different things. But now we actually get to see the whole world know what's happening. In the last episode, we see the Ascendancy team up with the Gelfling and betray. So we're going to see this big showdown soon. The Ascendancy scare me. Every episode that they're in, I can't stand spiders. Couldn't stand them in Doctor Who. Just can't stand them. because you guys have seen my reaction on the channel to spiders when I did arachnids in the UK. But let's get into the finale. In episode 10, the finale, the end of the series, a single piece was lost. There's way too much to get through. So much happens in this episode. I think it was even an extra 15 minutes, so really enjoy this one. Okay, from memory, the big moment for me that was a shocker, and I hated to watch it, was the Grunak's death. Now, throughout the series, there was so much misery in regards I felt for them. They were also doing bad things, so I started feeling, oh, okay, I know you're trying to get your own way, but is it worth doing those things? But one, their mouths are unsewn by each other when a knife is left around. You think they're going to get a happy ending. And then it just rips your heart out when you watch one of them get thrown into the crystal fires. But the second death was so brutal. It kind of looked like he was holding a chainsaw. The scientist says, you're going to pay. And he's just stabbing and stabbing. The creatures in the caves are watching. A creepy scene. Really, really creepy scene. Horrifying. Amazing battle scenes between the Skeksis and the Gelfling. They all come together as, not as one, but they fight it out. Shocking moment where Archer sacrifices his life jumping off the cliff. Did not see that coming. As I said, Hub kind of takes a back seat as he's not with the main characters. Rian kind of takes a step back, I think, as well. He was such a big, important role at the start of the series. We also see the return of Mother Aughra. So I mentioned that happening. The Skeksis get scared towards the end and they kind of run away. But we know, because we've seen the Dark Crystal film, that this isn't the end. And it was strange because I was kind of expecting a Skeksis to die. And I guess we did have a death. And that death was Chamberlain. Chamberlain says that you took my seat at the table, and Chamberlain murders one of his own kind. It was not the Emperor, not the Hunter. There's too many characters. The Emperor, the Hunter, the General. The General is killed by Chamberlain. Chamberlain established, he is the true villain of this series. He reminds me of Littlefinger if I was going to compare this to Game of Thrones. But the big shocker for me is that it looks like the darkening is now within our sweet, sweet Deet. Now, Deet could be the villain for next series. The purple eyes that we saw in the very first episode, or the second episode, I think it was the very first episode, where Deet has these flashing moments of what's going to happen, and it goes exactly to plan. Mother Aughra's plan goes to plan, but the Skeksis' reign is definitely not over. They create a new weapon at the very end between the Grunak and the, what are they called? The Ascendants, the spider Grunak creature, which are a main part of the Dark Crystal 1982 series. But there's so much more I could have spoken about. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to say this video is about 20 minutes long. I'm not too sure. I'm trying to break it down as much as possible for you guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you haven't seen the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance or the 1982 classic film, go and check it out. This is one of the best shows on Netflix for me, not just this year, but to come. In a world where there's so much CGI, for there to be puppetry and for you to enjoy it, and it to feel like Game of Thrones with so many big deaths, is just phenomenal. It was so enjoyable. Loved it from start to finish. Characters, Rian, Bria, Hup, Chamberlain, even the Emperor. I'd say the Emperor was pretty good. Scientist, Mark Hamill. There's such a big cast. Andy Samberg's in it. Toby Jones is in it. There's way too many people to list. Taron Egerton. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I might try and do some more movie reviews and TV review. My next review might be, if you guys want to see it, let me know in the comments. Do you guys want a review to Angry Birds 2? I went and saw that yesterday. Anyway, guys, that's it from me. Please do subscribe to the channel and definitely check out the film.